So, as some of you may know, we are entering what is known as the sixth mass extinction, or the Holocene extinction, or the Anthropocene extinction. We are losing biodiversity at an unprecedented rate, and this is due to habitat loss, deforestation, global warming, and general human activity. But before I continue, I thought I would just discuss this word, biodiversity. Biodiversity is a portmanteau of the terms biological and diversity, and it basically describes the variety and variability of life on Earth. This includes flora, fauna, fungi, and bacteria. Biodiversity is actually the natural infrastructure that supports all life, especially human life. And largely speaking, there are three main levels of biodiversity. The first is genetic biodiversity. This describes the variation of genetic material within the gene pool of a species. The second is species biodiversity. This describes the variation or variety of species within an area. And finally, we have ecosystem or habitat biodiversity. And this describes the variety of habitats available. But why is biodiversity so important? It is vital that we remember how complex and interdependent the biodiversity of the world is. We as humans are part of an enormous web of life, and we are reliant on nature for clean air, climate regulation, water sources, soil detoxification, food, and energy resources. From medicinal corals to agricultural pollinators, we are so dependent on Mother Nature for our very survival. Each living creature contributes to the maintenance of ecosystems, and through the combined actions of biotic, that is living, and abiotic, that is non-living components, the delicate balance of nature is upheld. And this intricate concept is explained really quite beautifully in this quote by the Scottish-American naturalist John Muir, when he says, "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in this universe." Unfortunately, our increasing and unsustainable demands are having an overwhelmingly negative impact on nature. Climate change, pollution, overexploitation of natural resources, habitat change, and invasive alien species are the five main threats to biodiversity. These are the direct drivers of biodiversity loss. Unless we successfully mitigate the impacts of these direct drivers of biodiversity change, they will continue to contribute to the loss of biodiversity components, negatively affect ecosystem integrity, and hamper all aspirations towards sustainable living. It is important to keep in mind that behind these direct drivers of biodiversity loss, there are a number of indirect drivers that interact in highly complex ways to cause human-induced changes in biodiversity. So these include demographic, economic, socio-political, cultural, religious, scientific, and technological factors. And these all influence human activities, which then directly impact biodiversity. So biodiversity loss basically describes the decline of species populations. And some experts actually assess that the rate of biodiversity loss and extinction is about 10,000 times higher than the natural rate should be. Iconic megafauna species like the orangutan, the Bengal tiger, the polar bear, these are all on the brink of extinction. But there are also many less well-known species that are declining at a frightening rate too. And especially here in the UK, we tend to think of extinction as some kind of a foreign, exotic concept, but actually native British species are also facing extinction. In fact, a quarter of all UK mammals, including things like the hedgehog, are threatened with extinction. Farmland birds, their numbers have plummeted by well over 60%. And this is actually a kind of recurring theme. It's mainly due to the cessation of traditional management practices. Climate change further exacerbates the impacts of the sixth mass extinction. And this is because climate change causes something called the escalator to extinction. This is basically a concept where animals and plants have to move their habitats further and further up because the temperature changes prevent them from living there until they reach a point where they can no longer survive in the conditions and are therefore wiped out. And another factor that's causing biodiversity loss is obviously the human population. And as the human population grows at an exponential rate, so does the biodiversity extinction rate. The current ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has also been a brutal reminder of the fact that when we destroy biodiversity, we are actually destroying the natural support system that holds human life. This is because the more biodiverse a region or an ecosystem is, the more difficult it is for a pathogen to rapidly spread or dominate. And the loss of biodiversity and human encroachment in habitats, this provides ample and perfect opportunities for pathogens to pass between animals to people. And this causes something called zoonotic diseases, for example, COVID-19. COVID-19 has caused worldwide calamity. It has had detrimental impacts on physical and mental health. But the pandemic has actually proved how valuable nature is for our body, mind, and soul. It is very well known that spending time outside in nature is very good for your health. Research actually shows that interacting with nature reduces anger, fear, and stress. It also has physiological benefits because it reduces blood pressure, heart rate, muscle tension, and may even reduce mortality. Nature deprivation, this is a lack of time spent in the natural world, can lead to depression and isolation. So there are evident links between exposure to nature and improvements in well-being, and these are all studied in a branch of psychology called eco-psychology. And the natural world also harbors great medicinal value as well. In fact, it's believed that there are more than 121 natural remedies in the rainforests that can be used as medicines. And 25% of all cancer-fighting organisms are found in the Amazon rainforest alone. In the UK, we have a common garden wildflower known as the dandelion, and this can actually stimulate digestion and acts as a general liver tonic. It is therefore imperative that we protect the world's biodiversity for the sake of our planet, our health, and our natural world. But we must start acting now. Time is running out, but there are many things that we can all do to improve the health of our planet. So what can we do? Well, first of all, it's important that we recognize that we can preserve wilderness on a local, regional, national, and then international level. Changing your own lifestyle choices to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly is a very good start. So if we go back to the kind of 5 major threats to biodiversity, there are some simple actions we can all do to reduce our contribution to these huge environmental pressures. So kind of obvious choices like going vegetarian or vegan or adopting a plant-based diet as often as you can reduce your ecological footprint and can help combat climate change. Did you know that producing over 1 kilogram's worth of beef can cause more greenhouse gas emissions than driving your car for 3 hours and uses the same, if not more, energy as leaving your house lights on for the same period of time? You could try increasing your use of public transport or like walking or cycling, and this will green your commute. Investing in renewables and divesting from fossil fuels can help the transition to a sustainable future where we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions and preventing the overexploitation of natural resources. Using public transport also enables you to kind of get outside in nature, especially if you're walking or cycling. If you refuse to use single-use plastics or if you avoid pesticides, you're being mindful of local wildlife, and you can prevent biodiversity loss on a local scale. To prevent the spread of invasive alien species, you can ensure that any outdoor equipment, for example, hiking or fishing gear, is cleaned properly so you prevent cross-contamination. This kind of cleaning procedure, you can find information online, and it's very specific to your local region. And it stops the transfer of non-native and unwanted microbes and algae into ecosystems. Gardeners and pond owners especially should learn of the dangers caused by invasive alien species and should try and reduce the risk of dumping aquatic plants into the wild. So these are very, very simple kind of biosecurity measures, but they do ensure the protection of natural native ecosystems from foreign species. There are some general actions relating to activism as well that we can all take, and it's a great way to protect the planet. Contacting local politicians to demand environmental justice is just one way in which we can pressure governments to create policies that support a green recovery. Learning about nature and speaking to others about the need to protect biodiversity is a great way in which we can connect with the natural world. On a broader scale, tropical forest conservation is actually one of the best and most efficient ways of combating both biodiversity loss and the climate crisis. It is believed that over 80% of the original forestry that once covered the earth has been damaged, cleared, or fragmented. And if we continue at this rate of deforestation, it is estimated that within 100 years, there will be no rainforests left on the face of the planet. The most common pressures causing deforestation are agriculture, unsustainable forest management, mining, and infrastructure projects. Cutting down forestry impacts humans, our planet, and biodiversity. Forests are actually home to over 200 million people, and an additional 1.4 billion people depend directly on forest goods for their survival. Deforestation threatens to deprive almost a quarter of the humans on the planet of their homes and/or livelihoods. And this quarter tends to be the most economically, the lowest kind of economic group of people as well. Trees, forest plants, and soil store huge amounts of carbon. They're huge carbon sinks. And deforestation causes this stored carbon to be released in the form of CO2. And as we know, CO2 is a greenhouse gas and therefore leads to global warming, which leads to climate change. In fact, rainforest loss contributes to 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions. But forests are a natural, sustainable solution to the climate emergency because of their incredible carbon sequestration powers. Almost 80% of all terrestrial biodiversity can be found in rainforests. But habitat destruction, soil depletion, and the clearing of forestry are the major reasons why we are entering the 6th mass extinction that I spoke about at the start of the presentation. This is why it is so crucial that we protect these rich, biodiverse rainforests. And there are many organizations that are doing just that. Many international groups and organizations are working to reverse biodiversity loss. And I am a member of one such organization called Reserva, the Youth Land Trust. Reserva was founded by Callie Broadest, who is a photographer, journalist, and environmentalist. And Reserva's aim was to create the world's first entirely youth-funded nature reserve. And I'm happy to announce that last year we were able to create the world's first entirely youth-funded nature reserve in Ecuador, in the Chocó rainforest. So our fundraising has led us to protect the Dracula Reserve in the Ecuadorian Andean Chocó. And this effort was facilitated by our partner organization, Rainforest Trust. To tell you a little bit about the site that we protected, it's one of the world's wettest regions of the planet. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's home to 9,000 species of vascular plants, 800 species of bird, including the Chocó toucan and the toucan barbet, two of the IUCN endangered species of birds. We have 270 species of mammals, including the spectacled bear. If you know who Paddington Bear is, he's a spectacled bear. And a huge variety of herpetofauna. So herpetofauna are basically invertebrates and amphibians and reptiles. And what's really incredible about the site is it's quite understudied. It's a scientifically a quite understudied site. So we're finding new species all the time. For example, on the left, you can see Hylocertus. It's brand new species of frog that we found. And on the right, you can see the Dracula orchid, which again is a brand new species of orchid that we found. And many of the species that inhabit our site are endemic. So there's the Chocó ecoregion has high endemicity, which basically means the species that we find there cannot be found anywhere else. And this is because it has a microclimate. It's got such high rainfall because it's one of the wettest regions on the planet, and that species are so highly adapted to the rainforest. In fact, up to 1.5% of global vertebrates cannot be found anywhere else but our site. So it's an incredible place. Unfortunately, the biodiversity here is very, very threatened, and this is due to hunting rates, deforestation, human disturbance, and mining. Human activity is having such a detrimental impact on species populations. Our site is actually home to the critically endangered brown-headed spider monkey. And because of mining and deforestation, the brown-headed spider monkey is now in the top 25 most endangered primates. This cloud forest is so rich in biodiversity, and it's also incredible because it's a carbon capture storage unit for carbon sequestration. And this helps us in the fight against climate change. Climate change is actually predicted by the end of the century to raise global temperatures by between 1.4 and 5.8 degrees Celsius. And in turn, this will increase sea levels by between 9 and 88 centimeters. However, Reserva protects the threatened ecosystem, and in doing so, both protects biodiversity and mitigates climate change. And this is the brown-headed spider monkey that I was talking about earlier. However, Reserva is not only protected this region, we're looking to protect the next site along so that we create something called a kind of corridor. And what corridors do, wildlife corridors allow animals to move between forests and kind of act like a belt or a transect. And this is really ecologically important because it allows animals to expand their habitats, breed, and increase the species populations. But Reserva relies on public donations. These donations are through crowdfunding, and our partner organization, Rainforest Trust, matches each donation dollar for dollar. So every single fund actually has twice the impact. We've had several fundraising events. For example, we've had Run for the Rainforest, and Run for the Rainforest is actually going to be coming up again. This is an international marathon, and it is regardless of your running capabilities. We just ask people to run either a mile or 5 miles, and we just ask them to just donate whatever they can in support of protecting this eco-region. We've also had Concert for Conservation, which was an international virtual concert with an incredible list of speakers, performers, and artists, and all for raising money for the Chacot. We also have the 1 Million Letters campaign, which is a project that I'm leading. This is a project which is kind of funded by National Geographic, and as part of the National Geographic's 30 for 30 campaign. This is a project where we ask young people to send us a letter saying why they love nature and why they think we should protect it. And what we do is we match these letters with $3. The reason we have this project is because lots of young people are unable to donate by themselves because they're not financially independent. So by sending this letter, we get a sponsor to donate $3. And then we take these letters and we're showing them to world leaders. For example, we show these letters at the recent COP26 conference, and we'll also be showing them at CBD, the Conference for Biological Diversity. We've also have many supporters, including Steve Backshall, who some of you may know from Deadly 60. He's a wildlife presenter. And we're also supported by Jane Goodall, who's an internationally renowned primatologist. In addition to kind of the fundraising aspect of Reserva, there's a youth council, which like I said, I'm a member of. So the youth council is the formal youth advisory and leadership body of Reserva. We actually have about 60 members from around 25 different countries across the globe. And the youth council supports the development and actions and initiatives of Reserva, and we serve as ambassadors, advisors, and conservation advocates. So Reserva kind of has three main kind of like aims through education, conservation, and storytelling. Reserva, with the help of Rainforest Trust, will help save the planet by protecting one of the most rich, biologically rich and interesting regions of the Earth. Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about Reserva, you can either scan the QR code or go to the website reservaYLT.org. Our social media handle for Reserva is @ReservaYLT. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's my email there, sadvikaiskrishan@gmail.com. And those are my Instagram and Twitter handles @saf.ssk and @safssk, respectively. But yeah, thank you so much.